Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the beginning of the last days. It is unprecedented days, and I don't know if you've been paying attention to the United States of America completely up in arms. You can bet a lot of people on their knees today praying for President Trump, and also, a lot of people yelling and screaming in the streets that I saw in anger, in complete, abandon to all, conscious thought that makes any sense at all, screaming their heads off. I saw a little bit of that going on in some video. But as I like to do, we have an incredible guest that is going to be bringing us the down low on what's happening in the United States of America. It is a grief to my heart. My father was American. My mother was Canadian. And so I share a kindred spirit with my brothers in America, as well as standing strongly here in Canada where I live. And I opened up my dad's Bible today. I love to read from my dad's Bible. It is worn and torn, and he has underlined it from stem to stern. And today it fell open to Proverbs 1. And it says, "Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit on you, and I will make known my words to you." My dad underlined that. And when it said, "Turn you at my reproof," I thought about the opportunity God is giving for America to indeed turn, for Canada to turn. We've got a big problem here. We have no one who will speak on behalf of the unborn. We have Bill C-11 that's attempting to shut down people like me and independent media from speaking at all. They want to control everything that you hear in Canada and everything that we say in Canada. We have Bill C-4 that is criminalizing any attempt to give a young person who is struggling with their gender, any attempt to give them some sort of alternate idea of how they could accept the gender that God has given them, that they could accept the sex and understand that God will help them in the process of working all of that out. Instead, we are forced, many people with who have psychiatric degrees, they cannot tell a person that they'll be happier in time to come without cutting off their breasts and their privates, without going on cross-sex hormones. If you dare to speak that, you stand to lose your license, you will be fined, and you can also be imprisoned in Canada. So this is where we're going. Everybody's lost their ever-loving minds. We have a leader. Remember Prime Minister Trudeau, one of the first things he did as soon as he got into office was he lowered the age of consent for anal sex to 14. That was one of the first things that Prime Minister Trudeau did. When you have such ridiculous things going on at the top of your country, you can only bet that the perversion that is happening in our schools the door has been opened from the very top of our country, so that now our children are being confused daily and also being shown pictures that I can't even show you on this show, because I put one up that was in a kid's book on Facebook, and I got a 30-day ban. That's how bad it is. So what are we to do? In the meantime, Donald Trump today has been indicted, and I want to bring on very quickly Dr. Mark Sherwood. He was born in Tulsa, raised near Berry Hill, and it sure sounds nice, let me tell you. Berry Hill sounds like such a wonderful place to grow up, doesn't it? Berry Hill, yeah, the Mayberries. His time was spent in law enforcement at the Functional Medical Institute, helping thousands of patients. He and his wife, Michelle, beautiful, beautiful woman, together form a partnership of principled leadership. Together they have successfully treated, listen to this, over actually probably about 11,000 COVID patients, resulting in 0 deaths. Many influential figures, including Kash Patel and Laura Trump, recommend Drs. Mark and Michelle Sherwood because of their stellar reputation as physicians. And we have them here today. And Dr. Mark Sherwood, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for weighing in on what is going on in the United States of America on this very eventful day.
It is indeed, Laura, and I appreciate you having me very much. It's an honor to be with you always. It's even a greater honor to call you friend.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I've watched with, a little bit of concern in my heart for what's going on there. We saw the president get out of his vehicle today. Apparently just takes him just about 15 minutes to get from his Manhattan apartment. I think it's in Manhattan. I don't know. But to get down to the courthouse, and you can see the back of his head there as he kind of turned back, I think briefly. He had waved to everyone. And there was quite a few supporters there. There's also people that are protesting the president there. And here we see him sitting in the courtroom. And so I would love to hear from you. We are hoping that there is going to be something that backfires in all of this, but nonetheless, today's events are very historical.
They are, Laura-Lynn. We saw something today that we never thought we'd see. We transgressed to the point where now this idea of prosecutorial discretion has been used to weaponize those powerful, very important, very integral positions to our Constitution and values. We've watched them be weaponized to create political advantage and political gain. You mentioned in your intro the idea of perversion. Well, perversion enters when we bring God out. And in America, I will tell you, as a nation, we were a nation under God, but we're rapidly transgressing to a nation that places himself above God. And when you do that, you're going to have perversion come in through sexuality, through economy, through the way we think, and through politics. And Laura-Lynn, this thing today, once this case was presented like this, and once we went down this pathway, and once charges were approved and filed, this opened up a whole new level of political gamesmanship and potential gains through weaponizing law enforcement to create antagonistic action towards political enemies. And so I can only think that this is going to happen in the future again and again and again. If you don't like somebody, you get a political person, law enforcement elected, then you can go out there and try to attack them.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Okay, all bets are off now. So can we go after Hunter Biden? Can we go after the dealings of the president at this time with his inappropriate actions with respect to China? I mean, is this opening a box that they perhaps should have never opened because it could come back to bite them?
Well, I think anytime you open a box like this, Pandora's box, whatever box you call it, you're opening up a dual-edged sword, aren't you? And I certainly think that can happen. I certainly think that, this could be flipped around the other way. And the sad thing about this, and I think we can't lose sight of the concept that, these are men and women, these are people. And I was thinking today, and maybe other people don't think like this, but I do. I thought, here's a father, a grandfather, a husband, and I thought of Melania, having to deal with this. I thought of their son Barron having to deal with this. And I don't know them personally, but I think, man, that's got to be a painful thing. And we as people, whether you like the man or not, you never need to wish hatred upon anybody, because now there's a battle. He's having to go through it. He's going to have to put up a very aggressive defense. And eventually, I would foresee, if these charges are not dismissed, it's going to be in the hands of 12 jurors, 12 men and women just like us, that are selected by agreement from both the defense and the prosecution. And in a jury box, anything can happen. So we've got a long way to go in this, a lot of angles that are going to be sort of looked at. But ultimately, here's a person that's got to go through a process that's got to be painful.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you bringing up the humanity of that. In some ways, Mark, it does seem that Donald Trump has been put into this category of, there's so much Trump derangement syndrome, some people call it, so much Trump hate that you dehumanize the individual. How strong do you have to be to have gone through what he's gone through? God has literally, definitely prepared him to be very strong to go through this, but his whole family's involved. And I really understand that. One of the things that that they had done is they kind of sealed all of these charges. Now that he's out and everything, is all of the charges now available for everyone to scrutinize?
They are. So I think a little context is probably appropriate now. So, from a former law enforcement standpoint, there's two different ways, if you will, to get charges pressed or filed against a human being. Number one is, as an officer, let's say you observe a crime in front of you, you you see it, you make an arrest, and then you take that person to jail, and charges are presented to the DA, and the DA approves them, and then a district attorney, and the district attorney approves them, and the person gets their day in court. Another way is if there's a criminal allegation alleged, that the police department or sheriff's office or whatever would do an investigation. If they see where charges are warranted, they see a crime's occurred, they have a person identified that they think did it, and more likely than not, that's the burden of proof. If they believe that, they present what's called an affidavit to be signed by a judge, and that judge can sign that and approve what's called an arrest warrant, and it brings the person to court. In this case, we have this grand jury, which is assembled periodically by these district attorneys, and these are just men and women that get subpoenas for jury duty, like you and I again, and they're given a period of time where they have to show up and sit in a room and have different cases presented to them. And in all these cases, they have to weigh out the evidence, and they have to make the decision, did a crime occur? Do we have a suspect that we believe did it? And do we believe more likely than not this person named did it? And then they take a vote in this case. And if the vote is yes, then there's an indictment. And so President Trump today was given the order to appear before the court. And of course, he pleaded not guilty. And now the indictment, which was kept sealed, will now be unsealed for the public to see those charges.
And so I heard some, pundits talking this morning about how they don't believe that the only charges can really be related to this payment to Stormy Daniels, that there must be more. To your knowledge, do you know if there's more, or has it been able to have been siphoned through all of these charges? Is it about more than this payment that was falsely, categorized into a legal payment or whatever by his lawyer? Is there more than that?
To date, and I did a lot of research, I was searching online everywhere, and prior to coming on with you to see if I could find anything else, and I have not seen anything else. From what I've observed with my own eyes and read with my own two eyes, it seems to be all about the quote-unquote hush money payment being paid to one Stormy Daniels to keep her story quiet, and then utilizing that expense as a campaign expense. And so that's the rub right there. That's the criminal allegation, that every time that payment was noted in documentation as a campaign expenditure, that is an individual count. And I believe there's 34 of those counts.
I mean, even I was listening to, I like to listen to my preferred network. And then I like to go over to the other networks, because I always find I get a little bit of information from both that neither of the other is talking about. And the people I don't think tell the truth, and they're a pack of liars and snakes and scorpions, they were saying that they just believed there had to be more, because they didn't think that this could just stick, that this sort of misdemeanor could be, or it could be raised to an indictable offense under what they're calling for. And so that was of interest to me. So this is going to play out over the next few days, I guess, with a lot of revelation and a lot of understanding about how serious it is. And then the key witness that they're relying on apparently either has already perjured himself or will have to admit to perjury in order to come against the president, because he said he had nothing on him.
Yeah, this is not going to play out just in the next few days. It's going to be the next few months and probably years. This is not something that's going to go away yesterday, and people should understand that. Now, when you have especially the credibility of the key witnesses here that is in serious question, you have people that have given a variety of stories, one Stormy Daniels and one Michael Cohen. Okay, so which story is the truth? And that's going to be up to the jury to decide eventually, based upon the defense and prosecution being able to examine and cross-examine those people. Now, when you have a witness such as the ones I named that have a credibility issue, the prosecution would be foolish, in my opinion, just to put them up there unless they would have had some sort of secondary evidence like text messages, voicemails, emails, or something to sort of back up a version, Laura-Lynn, of that particular story. Now, rest assured that these witnesses will be sitting on a stand in that court right in front of one Donald Trump, looking right at him, and they'll have to answer questions. Now, Donald Trump doesn't have to testify. He doesn't have to. He could, but he doesn't have to. Defendants don't have to. I wouldn't expect him to at all. So people, don't hold your breath for that one. I don't think that'd be a good move at all, based upon the circumstances that I know. But those witnesses are going to be grilled, not for hours, probably for days. And there will be an attempt to melt them down, like literally melt them down to mush until you determine what is truthful. This is not going to be a quick, speedy process. Everybody wants it to be. It's going to be an all-out war, an all-out blood and guts war. And I'm using that word intentionally because you're going to see all kinds of delays and tactics and attempts to dismiss, etc., for some many months.
So one thing that's all over Twitter right now, and I just want to put up, it's sort of a breaking news. It's from this DC, what is it, JT? DC Inquirer. And it's saying breaking, Trump awarded over $100,000 from Stormy Daniels amid arraignment. Note, this article may contain commentary reflecting the author's opinion. The news broke from Trump's second eldest son, Eric, who announced on Twitter the Ninth Circuit just awarded Trump $121,962.56 in attorney fees from Stormy Daniels' order, just released. This is in addition to the roughly $500K she already owes him.
Yeah, interesting. I saw that too, and I was trying to find some information like deeper into the case that
right.
that Eric was
Can we
referring
verify
to.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and people should understand this. If that's true, that would not be something that would prompt a dismissal of charges, like we might think it would. No, it would be something that could be used potentially to impeach a witness or to prove that she is not truthful. Of course, depending on the circumstances, the judge in that case could, and I haven't seen the circumstances, he or she, whatever the case would be, could rule that not relevant and not allowable. Which brings me to a powerful point. Mm-hmm. Where are you going to find 12 jurors, 12 men and women that haven't heard of this case somewhere in these United States of America? It's going to be tough. And when a jury is selected, Laura-Lynn, a whole pool of jurors is selected, and then the prosecution and defense get to ask them certain questions. So they're trying to find the best non-biased or unbiased jury they can. And so that's going to be another whole ordeal in this process.
Yeah, it really is. One of the things that we've seen is that they've tried to indict him a couple of times. Like, there is sort of an armor of protection that's round about him. And I just can't help thinking about the story of Esther, where, Haman just keeps going after the people of God, and eventually Haman is hung in the gallows. Yeah. He's prepared for others. And, I hope that is something that we're going to see play out in biblical epic proportions at this time.
Well, we can go back to Jesus. Jesus was falsely tried, falsely accused, falsely convicted, and falsely persecuted and put to death. But he had the last say. God always has the last say. Jesus rose again from death, hell, and the grave. As you mentioned, Esther and Haman. Haman hung from his own gallows, and you can see this time and time again played out. There is protection around God's people. And who is the accuser of the brethren? That's the enemy. In both sides of this equation, both sides, we as people of God need to be very cautious about firing out accusations that are falling into the trap of this whole thing, because accusations like this make us fall in line with the enemy, and he has a great time with us when we are being divided. And so we need to stand together in prayer that God's people be protected, that God's name will be glorified, and that the truth, which sets people free, will always come out and be glorified in the end. And we know, you and I know, and I believe that President Trump knows this, that God is ultimately in authority. He ultimately is one we trust our protection in, and we're going to see this play out. And he is not going to plead guilty, nor should he. He's going to come up with a very aggressive defense. They're going to come at it with everything they have. They're going to attack those witnesses. They're going to attack every shred of evidence. And it's going to be a challenge, literally, for the prosecution to get a conviction in this case.
One of the things that we've seen in the last few polls in the last few days is that Trump's, he's surging in the polls. He's moving ahead.
No,
This has not harmed him yet.
no, it's not. And I think that, like to your point, it's like when you open up this box, you better be careful that there might be a lion in that box. You think, here, kitty, kitty, but no, this is a lion you're messing with. And the problem with this thing is that, today in our world, I believe that there's people out there, and I think we could assume who they are, that want to see one Donald J. Trump convicted of a crime that would make him ineligible to run for president. I think that's the biggest game. But even in this case, it's going to be a hard leap to get there. And they know that. But when you do that, you are literally firing up the multitudes to come to the aid and the defense of same. And so you're seeing that happen right now through polls and commentary, and obviously through physical demonstrations of protest. And so people are going to stand up for this one. And I don't see anything stopping him to gain the Republican nomination for president of the United States in the next election cycle.
So, with respect to this, I believe his name, it's Alan Bragg.
Mm-hmm.
He came into his office basically threatening and swearing that, as you know, one of the reasons you should vote me in is I'm going after Donald Trump. And now this weaponization of the DOJ and of the justice system against a former prime minister, unprecedented times. And he's doing what he swore that he would do. And at the same time, he's speaking out of the other side of his mouth saying that, no, this isn't, the weaponization of this office. We have legitimate, concerns here. And it does seem that it's very wrong on that account.
Well, and I've dealt with district attorneys in my day several times. Laura-Lynn, they're elected officials. And unfortunately, politics as a general rule has regressed into agenda-driven antics instead of people-serving processes. It becomes about climbing ladders and getting notoriety and getting clickbait headlines compared to just saying, I'm here to serve the people. I would rather DA Bragg would have ran on a campaign that says, I'm here to stand for and protect the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of New York, and the laws and ordinances of the city of New York. And I'm going to do that to protect the citizens of this great county with everything I have, with my life if need be. That would have been the proper campaign approach. But no, we can't do that anymore. And frankly, Laura-Lynn, it doesn't seem like those type of candidates have a chance anymore. It's the more inflammatory you can be, the more attention you can get, the more money that's fused into campaigns, because they know that when you get a person like that in there, he's simply fulfilling his campaign promise, isn't he? That's all he's doing. And the people of Manhattan County voted him in there. And the sad thing about this, Laura-Lynn, is the people of Manhattan County, they're not up in arms. They're not saying, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we wanted there, dude. They're not doing that. I'm concerned about the people here. What has gotten into people that votes people into office that have an agenda to just go after one person in a wonderfully important position like that? One, the chief law enforcement officer in the county, you could say that. Why did we regress so much as a people to vote somebody in to make armed robbery a misdemeanor and Donald Trump public enemy number one? That to me, Laura-Lynn, is disturbing as anything. And if you think that can't happen on the other side, we need to wake up, because there can be some rogue Republicans out here that would do the same thing, get a rogue Republican DA that would do the same thing to somebody out here that may not agree with him or her. And so this open door right now is something that cannot be shut anymore. It's like once you spread a rumor, you can't undo it. Once you ring a bell, you can't unring it. This is a historic day, a sad day in the country of America.
Tucker Carlson was speaking to some of what you said there regarding Mr. Bragg actually having, letting a lot of people that get caught on doing serious crimes, violent crimes, and they get a slap on the wrist and they're out in no time. And he is releasing criminals back onto the street constantly. And this is happening in many of these Soros-invested states where crime is just skyrocketing right now in your country.
Yeah, and it's under the idea of prosecutorial discretion. I'll give you an example of this because people wonder, what's that? And is that okay? Well, basically it is okay. And let me pretend that I'm a law enforcement officer in uniform again, patrolling around, and I see two cars speeding. One is Laura-Lynn and one is Jane Doe. Laura-Lynn is going 55 miles an hour in a 50 mile an hour zone, and Jane Doe is going 60 miles an hour in the same 50 mile an hour zone. I stop Laura-Lynn and I write Laura-Lynn a ticket for 55 miles an hour. But Laura-Lynn says, that's not right. This other person over here, Jane Doe, I know her, she's my neighbor, and she just blew past me at 60. So fairness has nowhere near the idea of prosecutorial discretion. They can do that. Is it right? No. You mentioned perversion at the top of the interview. It's perverted ethics. It's perverted character. It's perverted morals. Under the idea prisons are getting too crowded, we're letting people out, and then we're spending our taxpayer money for this. I mean, I don't see the valid reasoning and rationale behind this. And so, I give people all sides of the coin there with that. But we're in a place now, and this is true as well. I want to make this point, and I want people to catch this. There are people out there in America that are wanting their senators and congressmen to go out and take action against DA Bragg. That's a trap as well, Laura-Lynn. We don't want that, because if they do, that makes the federal government more powerful over the top of the states and local municipalities. And you don't want that, because that would elevate them to this place that you can't take back either. So you can see this thing has all kinds of moving parts, all kinds of negative potential. I don't see anything good coming out of this for our country at this point.
Yeah, it's actually really a sad day.
Yep.
Mark, do you think that this is causing and propelling people of faith to cry out to God? The Lord says in his word that if my people will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then God will forgive us and heal our land. Do you think that the more of this kind of nonsense that we see, actually, the more maybe we're going to be seeing a move of God to counteract this darkness?
Laura-Lynn, I can pray that way. I know in my heart, I've got very emotional today thinking about what this means for our country, what it means for people, how far we've gotten away from a nation under, meaning that we put him in authority as the creator of the universe, how that God blessed America. He did. He's blessed North America for that matter. And he's made us prosperous. He's made us supplied with we are not without. We don't have all kind of poverty. We haven't been persecuted very much. Not really, not compared to the world. And yet here we are. Laura, and I can only hope makes people stop and go, okay, I need to get my life right with God. I need to get my heart right with God. I need to cry out for repentance on behalf of myself, my family, and the lineage in which I stand in, and the gap in which I stand, so that I can have God represented through my life. And if every person listening to this right now did that right now, Laura-Lynn, that would make a significant difference, because then we become light bearers in a darkened world. And I can only hope that that is the mission we get from this. Yeah, I don't like what's going on either. But Laura-Lynn, if this drives people to repentance, and it really fulfills that Second Chronicles passage that you just pointed out, and God heals our land, man, praise the Lord. That's the opportunity we have. And I hope that this does point people.
Have we lost his feed? Is he frozen? Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. So are you looking at me? Okay,
Hear you
sorry.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I had a very strange sound in my ear. Mark, I remember when Clinton was accused of his affair with Monica Lewinsky, and he perjured himself, basically. And yet the Republicans at that time, they did not choose to pursue and to go this route. And that showed a lot of grace at that time. It seems like when you look at where society is right now, and you say that you've had some, it's been emotional. I've heard that from a lot of people looking at the country of the United States of America, where we've come, what's happened, not just in what's happening to Donald Trump, but also monetarily, and with the Ukraine Russia war that's going on, with all of our some of our enemies allying together now against America. This is unprecedented times, but there was a certain grace that was given by the Republicans to Clinton at that hour. And we're not seeing that kind of grace really being extended. There has been a far greater divide, I would say. It's like the country is very divided right now.
Indeed. The devil's playground is in the status and place of division. And that's what the devil's trying to do. He's trying to divide people, because when you can divide, you can conquer. And as we know in 2 Peter, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking those he may devour. And who does a lion attack? A lion attacks the straggler, the person left alone, and the person that's isolated and divided from the group. It's exactly what's happening right now. We've forgotten that we've all been forgiven much. And so the amazing grace of God is sort of put on the shelf, and now we're trying to play God and use our forces on earth, the power we have, the influence we have, the positions we have to penalize and punish and accuse people. That's not about grace. You're right. Bill Clinton was shown incredible grace, even by those that didn't like him very much. That's the way that America was birthed. I mean, it wasn't birthed with fighting all the time. It was eventually a nation that was about differences, a lot of differences that people could disagree and argue about a little bit, but at the end of the day, they were all Americans, and they did show grace. But Laura-Lynn, when we pulled God out of the equation, this is what we get. And the only way to remedy the situation is to put the missing piece back in the heart of mankind. And that's that unique piece, that unique void that only God can fill. I think I lost your sound just for a second there.
Yeah, that's what I love about you, Mark. You and your wife, you are the heart of the people of America. You love God, you love your country, you absolutely decry this accusation of racism. You want standards of God's sexuality, gender and all of that to be upheld in your country. And yet there is one of the most tremendous fights we've ever seen against all of it. And if I were to, look back 10 years, I don't know if we could have predicted the rise in pedophiles. You guys down there have been having the same kind of problem as us up here with the drag queen hours becoming sort of
Yep.
like fought for, like we have our right to have this, while we allow these pedophiles that want to get near children. This is exactly what they dress up like women and try to get near the kids.
No, it's a rapid transgression down a pathway towards the abyss. That's where we're going right now. We see this acceptance of things that are clearly not just immoral, Laura-Lynn, not just unethical. They're anti-God. They really are. And this is an attack on God. And frankly, the world will always be in opposition to God. But God's people represent something that the world needs. And we're supposed to be ambassadors to this world. And right now, this stuff that's being accepted, it was predicted. It's supposed to be. Things have to get bad before people realize they need God. And hopefully, this will sort of wake people up a little bit to not allow this to just be business as everyday usual. But no, this is not business as usual anymore. This put it to a whole new level, and it will continue to get this way. And you mentioned these drag queen things going on. People are born male and female, and that's scripted in the DNA. When God knit us together in a double helix in the nucleus, those 23 chromosomes of men and women, of the mom and dad, our sex is determined at that time. And no matter how much we want to imagine it, no matter how we want to dress, no matter how many hormones we want to take, or how much wax we put on our faces, or the way we mutilate our bodies, we are still born in the image of God, in male and female. And anytime you come against that, there's going to be literally confusion, there's going to be hatred, and there's going to be anger from the person going through that, because they know down deep they are denying the fingerprint of God in their lives. And so that's why you see the anger coming out when you don't agree with that. You don't not love the person, you hate the sin, but that's why you see the anger come out so much today.
Well, we see Alan Bragg basically on the screen right now, and there's certainly not much kindness, a lot of hate, and a lot of venom that's coming from this side. Could you tell me, in your best guess, you've been watching Donald Trump now for a lot of years, and you've seen him overcome an awful lot, and we also know he is a man of prayer, and he has a lot of people praying for him. He's so brave. I mean, isn't he's really one of a kind. And could you tell me, in your best guess, how he's viewing all of this? What he's using to be his strength to get through this day?
Well, President Trump has learned over the course of time how to contain his emotions, at least the sad emotions. Now, he hasn't really contained his anger sometimes, and I don't really blame him. When you get attacked so much, you get pushed around, you get put in the corner, you're going to come out biting, or hitting back. And he's done that. He's a strong guy. He's obviously got a lot of strong will, being attacked so much over so many times. This is not remember, we still got the Mar-a-Lago thing going on. We've still got the Georgia election stuff going on. My biggest concern now with this is, and I don't want it to be lost in the weeds, is these other cases now, they might get a little bit more confident to say, well, they did it first in Manhattan, so we're going to do it down here. So I don't see this being the end of the legal drama nonsense. But if anything, what I've seen about the person of Donald Trump, and again, I've met Eric, but I haven't met, and I met Laura, but I haven't met Mr. Trump. yet. Probably will one day, I suppose. But I've seen him have a resolve and a galvanizing of character in the sense that he's not going to buckle. He's not going to back down. And it seems like when he's pushed harder, he stands up a little harder. So, that's what I've observed. I see this no different. I do feel for his family right now, though. Laura-Lynn, I feel badly for them because can you imagine these salacious allegations coming out in a court of law and his wife, Melania having to sit there and listen to this? I mean, you can't, that to me, that's a painful thing. Then he's going to go home and they have to have a normal relationship as a husband and wife as can be. And that, to me, that's a challenging situation. And I think he's up for the task. I don't think he's ever backed away from any fight that I've seen.
I agree. And that's what we're going to have to believe, isn't it, Mark, that God is going to give that family strength. He called them to this hour. And I was thinking this morning when I got up about David. David was, the greatest king that Israel ever had. David killed people in war. He had blood on his hands, as they said. He was caught in adultery. He had sexual sin in his life. And at the end of his life, because David was a man who returned to God and he asked for forgiveness, the Lord said of him, "You are a man after my own heart." And it's kind of shocking at times that the Christian community is so very, at times, judgmental of Mr. Trump. The group that fights for, in and amongst all of this. But let's remember this, David, the Psalms are written by David, this man of God who was very fallible. And I often say, if God can forgive David, if God can forgive myself, if God can forgive the worst sinners that we know of, then he certainly has been able to come to terms with the sin of Donald Trump and also the heart of Donald Trump moving towards God. And we've seen that in so many ways. He was very pro-life. He brought God and spoke of God openly, even the name of Jesus Christ. And I deeply value that about him.
I do too. And you're right about, David, he went through everything, didn't he? Adultery, murder, lying, the whole bit,
Yeah.
And we're not saying, Donald Trump did any of that, but we're saying that's an idea that God honors a repentant heart. And that goes for Democrats, Republicans, or anyone. God honored the repentant heart of the thief on the cross in his last hour of life next to Jesus, didn't he? And that guy deserved to be there because he did the crime and that was the punishment, his death. And yet there's forgiveness. And we've got to get back to that because frankly, Laura-Lynn, that is the spirit of America. You look at the history of this great land, how many times we've been in wars and defeated the enemy, right? And then go back through the grace and charity and rebuild what we destroyed. How does that happen? And it's like, what about the Japanese who came in and bombed Pearl Harbor and unwittingly.
And the Berlin airlift.
Yeah, just unbelievable stuff. And yet now they're our partners. We've got to get back to this as a nation, but even bigger than that, as people of God. I think that's even a bigger call right now.
Right. And to your point, we're not saying Donald Trump even did anything. He's actually completely denied any of these allegations that there was ever an issue with Stormy Daniels. And so,
right.
I stand with that. She signed something to that effect. The higher you get, you've got people who attack you. They want your money. They want fame or fortune. They look for some kind of road to get their name, out there. And this is what you deal with. The higher you go, you've got more of these kind of problems. And so we're going to stand with him as innocent. And we're going to stand with him to get through this yet another assault. And we pray by the power of the Holy Spirit that God will just, orchestrate things down there so that Haman gets hanged on his own gallows. That's what I'd like to see.
It always goes like this: what goes around comes around. When you judge others, it'll be poured out on you increasingly, overflowing. A guy told me a long time ago, he was John Jacobs, the founder of the Power Team. You know, he's a dear friend of mine. I was in the Power Team, as you know, right?
Yeah.
He said, Mark, you're a talented guy. He goes, you're going to achieve anything you want in life. But he goes, I want you to remember this. He goes, you're like a baboon in a zoo that everybody's watching. And the higher you climb that tree, and the more agility and willingness you show to keep climbing that tree every day, people that are watching on the downside of that, the more of your backside they're going to see. Just remember that. And that goes for everybody. The more you try to do something that's good for the world, the more you stick your neck out there, the more of your backside they're going to see. And frankly, everybody's got a backside. But I admire people that at least get out there and try to do something like Donald J. Trump.
100%. 100%. And we just thank you so much, Dr. Mark Sherwood. Thank you for your time. Thanks for standing so strongly in America as a righteous man, and you and your wife doing so much to help others. People can follow you, I guess. You got a great website. Has that's been going up, right, under his name? And we just want you to know that it's just no coincidence that you have, been brought to us on this very day to help us to unpack this, to have hope, and to know that God's in control. And you've brought an encouraging message, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate your spirit. You're beautiful people. And thank you so much today, Mark, for being with us.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. And my hope and prayer is that this is, in a time like this, we've still brought encouragement and still brought some focus to the Lord.
Amen. Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
God bless. So, JT, you were saying that you've got something else, that you've got this article here that we could put up. Daughter of judge overseeing Donald Trump's case worked in the Biden-Harris campaign. A little bit like Canada, eh? Yeah, too bad Mark's gone. I could ask him about that. But, there's always seems to be so much collusion, right? That's going on here in Canada, where every time we have a special counsel appointed to, get oversight on something, we seem to, Trudeau is appointing his niece, or, I'm exaggerating there, but somebody who's related, and, the sister-in-law or uncle to a cousin, who knows, So as we proceed today, I do not see a list. Should I just go to my email here? No, we had a couple of things, JT. Yeah, okay. All right, so the Ottawa's People Commission report in Canada here, a reading of the report, basically complete lies. Take a listen.
In the report we are releasing today, after the occupation, change, we expand on the analysis of our Part 1 report, What We Heard, which was released on January 30th. We make it clear that this was far more than provocative protest. It was an orchestrated occupation, a word we use deliberately, of central Ottawa that brought life in those neighborhoods to a standstill and left thousands of people isolated and traumatized. An occupation that would not have been tolerated in other parts of the city, but was allowed to take hold in lower income neighborhoods home to vulnerable communities. An occupation that became entrenched in the unceded lands of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people with no respect for their leadership and traditions. We explain why we reject out of hand that the convoy experience was mainly peaceful. It was violent, both physically and psychologically. It was replete with violent human rights abuses. People were violently assaulted and accosted. They were tormented by sound torture and by the violence of racism and hate. For many residents of Ottawa, the legacy of that violence remains 14 months later, easily triggered by a loud horn or a Canadian flag on a passing truck.
Easily triggered by a Canadian flag on a passing truck. Ooh, we're all triggered by a bunch of people who went to Ottawa and had bouncy castles and sang the national anthem and had, had a Canadian flag on their vehicles. Like, what a joke, this guy. Oh, he's so angry. I mean, like just the epitome of demonization. Just hysterical. I mean, I was there. I was there for 3 weeks. I wonder if this guy ever walked that street? Did he ever walk? Because any of these people who are critical and criticizing what happened with Freedom Convoy 2022, I wonder if any of them actually set foot to do their own investigation without all of these lies and nonsense. I mean, it's just we're being triggered by the Canadian flag. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Technocracy News and Trends reports on scientists in California putting mRNA vaccines into plants for people to eat. So this is great. Wow, edible plants being altered to carry mRNA for the vaccine payload. I don't think that's good because maybe we all didn't want to have that mRNA stuff. We're going to have to have somebody come on now. I'm kind of encouraged because Dr. Bonnie Millard is on our field of amazing doctors that will be doing these events with us. And this is what she will be speaking about. She will be speaking about agriculture and the impact of what they're trying to do to our animals. And so we do have a video regarding the events coming up. I hope you've got your tickets. I'll tell you how to get tickets right after this. Have a look.
One thing that everyone should be taking away from this is to not put faith and trust in the pharmaceutical industry or their drug dealers that they call medical doctors.
How are we going to gain back the trust of the public?
They really want the story of Canadian doctors dropping dead suddenly and unexpectedly to go away. They don't want anyone asking questions. They don't want anyone investigating it. And these deaths continue to happen.
They stand beside you and they have a certificate that said 2 needles went into my shoulder, right? Meanwhile, they have not mounted an immune response whatsoever.
If you dare to speak up for the victims of the totalitarian regime, then you yourself will become a victim. That's a dangerous road.
Do not let your children be vaccinated with these vaccines. The only person who has liability here is your child.
Wow. I am so excited about these amazing heroes from the United States and Canada now joining us on this tour. This is epic. I think this is some of the finest truth tellers, medical experts that there are on the planet. They will be here. They will be in Calgary. You can have a look at my share there. They will be in Calgary on the 15th of April. And they will be in Red Deer on the 16th. And we will be coming to Vancouver, Surrey, British Columbia on the 18th. And so I hope that all of you can join us on those incredible days. Get your tickets fast. You can go to Laura-Lynn.tv and click on there, and that will take you to the Eventbrite event. Oh, each poster is up there, and then underneath it, it's got. Oh, you can click on the poster. Oh, you just click on the poster on my website. That's awesome. Good. Nice work. I just love these guys. These people are telling the truth, and they're not sparing their reputations. They're not cowards, and they're speaking it, and they're leaving their personal lives aside for a moment to come to someplace beautiful like British Columbia. And so we're very, very grateful, and Alberta, that they are doing that. And we want to also remind you that if you are concerned about what's happening in the economy, every single day you can read about some of the disturbing trends that we're seeing, the banks, the debt in our land, the money that we once hoped would be valuable. As I said today on the show, it's worth 60 cents to the US dollar. Now, the US dollar is fast becoming of no value across the world. Have you heard that China and Russia and places in the Middle East are joining together? They're using their own currency. They're coming up with a new way. They are bypassing the American dollar, which has always sort of been the standard. It's done, folks. So if the US dollar is losing its value and our dollar in Canada is 60 cents to $1 US, I don't think that's great. So a lot of you are making a decision to maybe do something different with your funds. If you'd like to speak to a specialist on gold and silver, this is the hour. I don't know that there's ever been a more important time to take care of what God has given you, to be prudent at this hour. Sun City Silver, Steve Merrill at sovereignize at protonmail.com. I want to leave you briefly today with something that I was listening to in my ear last night. I decided that I would listen to Luke, and oh man, every single book in the Bible is filled with such a treasure. And every story that Jesus told, all of the parables he told, everything that the disciples outlined in this Bible, it's all for our edification. It's so that we will know who God is, how powerful he is, how much he loves us. And with God, he doesn't care about us being rich. He doesn't care how much you have acquired. Sometimes we think that the wealthy people are the important people. Not to God. God looks at each of us and he sees your plight and he sees your pain. He's aware intimately of what you're dealing with today, whether it's in relationships, whether it has to do with your feelings of purpose or lack of. God is very into you. He loves helping you. He's such a gentleman, though, that he will always wait for your permission. So if you don't feel like God is really there right now, be sure you've invited him there, and then wait, because he always shows up. So this is what it says in Luke 21. As Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury, and he also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. And he said, "Truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all that she had to live on." I really appreciate that. You know, there have been times in my life, because I have a heart of giving, and I always tithe, and I always want to be sure that I am returning to God at least a 10th in a tithe. I've been very aware that I didn't have much to give at certain times in my life. But I can tell you, sure as I live today, that God has been faithful to me, that he has honored my life of giving, and that he will honor your life of giving. In fact, in Malachi, do you know the only time that God says, "Tempt me, try me, see if I will not open the windows of heaven to you if you are faithful to him with your funds"? If you are faithful to God, you're not putting your hope in all that money. You're willing to help your fellow man. You're willing to be kind to those who are in need. You're willing to tithe to that place of worship, that house of worship that you're at. Wherever you're getting fed, you are willing to sow of what God has given you into that ministry. The word promises that he is faithful to see it. See if he will not open the windows of heaven. I can testify to you today that my God has been faithful, and he will be so to you. See you tomorrow.
You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.laura-lynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.